Good afternoon. Welcome to The Big Show. The Big Show comes at you every single day about 5 o'clock, right around 5 o'clock. That's what we try and do. Big Show brought to you by FanDuel Casino. And, of course, the app. Get the app on your phone. We'll talk a little bit about what you can do on FanDuel a little bit later. Of course, we're also brought to you by Archie's on Carson Street. Get down to Archie's. Archie's, home of 80-cent wings, Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So get down to Archie's and enjoy. Good meal, good time, all that other good stuff, as Archie's is the place for you to be. Now then, we've got a big show. Well, not really a big show, but we do have a big show, sort of, when it comes to today, because we're almost at the halfway mark of the season. Not quite, but now's a good time to take a look at all of the offseason guys that they brought in to kind of see who exactly it is that, the job so far that has been done in order to see what the Steelers have done this year to get better. Let's go with, basically, when you look at it, Omar Khan made a lot of moves to try and make this team better. And now we're going to look at him and say, okay, which has worked out, which has not worked out, right? Because that's really what you kind of do when you do these kinds of shows and figure out what is good and what isn't. And so you look at what he did, and of course you start with the acquisitions that he made to make the team better. Top of the list, DK Metcalf, traded him for a second-round pick. I think everybody would probably say that DK Metcalf is the kind of move that you give an A to. Actually, maybe even an A+. I mean, he's been really, really good. He's been their best player. He's been, everything they'd hoped for, and then some. He makes combat catches. He makes tough catches. He's physical. He's everything you want from when you sign a guy like him. That's what you're looking for, is what he's done for them. And you know what? I think he's just sort of getting started. That's the other part of it. I really do. I think that the more that he plays and the more that he gets comfortable with Aaron Rodgers in the passing game, the better he's going to be. Honestly, the better he's going to be. Because to me, I think that he's just sort of scratching the surface, just sort of figuring it out. And as he's figuring it out a little bit at a time, I'll be honest with you, he's exciting me, what he could be for them. So I think actually, if I'm going to start with an acquisition that I really like, the easiest one, the best one for me, is DK Metcalf, because he's a guy they brought in not just for this year, they brought him in for the next, 5 years. Now, they're paying him a lot of money. I get it. But the reality is the money they're paying him is going to be worth it as long as they are able to have a quarterback that can throw him the ball. And I think that the thing about DK Metcalf and what we've seen from him so far, and what I like really from him and the Steelers, is they've identified him as their playmaker. They've identified him as their guy. It's amazing how many times, you see these teams, they sign somebody or they bring in somebody, right, who's supposed to be the star or whatever you want to call it. And let me fix this real quick. And the next thing you know, that's better. The next thing you know, that guy, is just not, featured. And you start to wonder, well, why is this guy not featured? You look at DK Metcalf, right? Targets, 36. 10 more than the next guy on the list. Receptions, 22. Yards receiving, 406. He leads in every one of those categories, including receiving touchdowns. In fact, he's got 4. The next guy is Pat Freiermuth, who has 2. Pat Freiermuth had 2 this last week. So my point is, they are actually treating him like he's a star. And I think it's only going to get better from here. So if you're asking me to grade that, I would grade that an A+. I would grade Aaron Rodgers an A, honestly. And I think the reason I would grade him an A, maybe not quite an A+, is because it's pretty clear that they're not quite comfortable letting him sling the ball over the field. Probably says something about his age. Right? Probably says something about his age. That has to be a little bit troublesome when you look down the road and, week 16, 17, is he still going to have it? All I'm telling you is this, right? It's just going to be, can he get there healthy? Can he get there, strong? And can he get there in a place where he can still make plays for them? But right now, it's very clear to me, what they're doing with him. They're trying to protect him a little bit. They're trying not to, ask him to carry too much of the load. Overall, though, he is the best quarterback that the Steelers have had since before Ben Roethlisberger's surgery on his elbow. And what I mean by that is, when obviously Ben in his career was, a Hall of Famer and all that good stuff. But this is the best quarterback play the Steelers have had in 5 years, maybe. And, on some level, it's not saying much when, you're talking about Duck and Mason Rudolph and Mitch Trubisky, who struggled here, and Kenny Pickett, who struggled here, and, all these other guys. But my point is, you brought Aaron Rodgers in here because you are trying to win this year, and you knew that you needed a better quarterback than Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, which, by the way, Justin Fields is a guy who, there were some that thought that the Steelers should sign him. I would have been okay if they signed him again. But here's the thing that's pretty clear to me. He's just not a good quarterback. And I was wrong when I said that, if he stayed here, the Steelers could win some games with him and all that other good stuff. He's just who he is, And as an aside, and I think this is an interesting discussion, right? But I think we're starting to see the pendulum. I wrote about this after the Steeler game. We're starting to see the pendulum swing a little bit back to guys who can actually play this position of quarterback like Aaron Rodgers. What we saw on Thursday night with Joe Flacco and Aaron Rodgers, you want to know why one guy's still in the league at 41 or whatever and the other guy's still in the league at 42? Right? That's, to me, I would tell you, it's because teams are starting to figure it out. These teams are all starting to figure it out. They're starting to figure out that you need a guy that can drop back and pass accurately. And these running around guys are great unless, guess what? They're like Justin Fields, who never really has learned how to read a defense, isn't very accurate when he throws it. He can throw it on the run a little bit. He's got a pretty big arm, but you're not winning that way. And the only exception to that is Jalen Hurts, who is probably a better passer than people give him credit for. He's not great, but he's in an offense with probably the best offensive line in football, the best roster in football, the best collection of weapons around him, right? And they're committed to running him and letting him be a running quarterback, which most teams aren't. That's the one exception. But if you look at all these other guys, if you look at the guys that win Super Bowls, it's guys that drop back and pass. Pat Mahomes, for all of his little running around, you know what Pat Mahomes is really good at? Dropping back and making throws. Period. And that is, to me, what I would tell you. He's very good at, dropping back and making throws. Look at some of the other quarterbacks who have won Super Bowls in recent years, right? Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady, Joe Flacco, Nick Foles. We could go down the list of the guys who won Super Bowls in recent years. Almost all of them, basically all of them for the most part, Ben Roethlisberger, Aaron Rodgers, they're all guys who drop back and pass. who can throw accurately, who can make throws on time and get them to where they need to get them to. Period. So I feel like, that is the one thing about Aaron Rodgers. You brought in a guy who's a really good quarterback. And he's a guy who probably can make throws that, you haven't had guys who could make in recent years. I think that's always going to be something you need to, really look at when you look at Aaron Rodgers. That, to me, is the most important thing is he's a guy that can make throws under pressure in the pocket on time. And so he has been, to me, the team MVP this year. I think that, quarterback play, that all sort of factors into the way the offense works. Not the running game, checking having the ability to check into good plays for your running backs, see the defense, call what's on, make changes at the line. All of that is his quarterback IQ is what I call it. And the Steelers have benefited greatly from that. And I think that's the key to me. He is really, really, really good at what he does. And so that's why I give him an A. The only reason I don't give him an A+ is because he doesn't quite have the physical tools. When you look at him, he doesn't quite have the physical tools that he once did. It's not his fault. In some ways, Father Time is undefeated. But as an aside, if you really want to go down this route, another guy they brought in is Mason Rudolph. They brought in Mason Rudolph. And you know what? I'll give Mason Rudolph a B. They brought in a backup quarterback who's competent. Now, he hasn't had to play yet. You know what I'm saying? So we don't know. But to me, I think what he's capable of doing and what they've shown him to be, he's a good insurance policy. So not much to say about it because he hasn't played much. But I will say this. You know what? You sign a guy to be your backup. You want it to be somebody you can trust. He seems to be that guy. Okay, now let's go to Jalen Ramsey. I say basically you look at Jalen Ramsey and I'd probably give him a B-. I think he's been good enough. I think he's been an upgrade over what they had last year. I don't know necessarily that he's lived up to what they've wanted him to be as the number one corner. I just don't believe that. I think that he is okay. I think he's been good enough, and he's made some plays. I think that he's in one of those situations where he has a chance to be a solid corner, a guy who, makes enough plays and gives them the opportunity to get some stops in the passing game. Probably he'll have some interceptions. Maybe even, they've blitzed him a little bit. He's made some big plays. But I don't know that he has necessarily been that CB1 that shuts down the other team. They want him to be that, but I don't know that he's been that. That's the problem. You got to, you bring in a guy like that to be the number one guy, the superstar. I think he has to be that, and he just hasn't. We saw him last week against Jamar Chase. It didn't go well for him, and I think that's a bit of a problem. So to me, I don't know. I look at Jalen Ramsey. I think it was a good move from the standpoint of you needed to get a better corner, but it also, in many ways, I think if you look at it, probably they still are without a true CB1, so to speak. Now, there's a lot of things you can do to protect them. You can, use safety help. Obviously the pass rush helps. There's a lot of different ways that you can protect him. But in terms of what they wanted to do with him, which is we're going to put him out there and just let him basically make plays and shut down the other team's best receiver, I just don't think you can do that with him. I think we saw that last week against Jamar Chase. That's been sort of the rub on him. The other guy is Darius Slay. I'll be kind. I'll give him a C. But I will say, I think he looks like a guy who proves that Father Time is undefeated. And I just think he's been, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say he's been bad. He just really hadn't been very good at times. And I think that's, your slot corner shows up at times, you know what I mean? But he is just basically not what they thought he was going to be. They thought he'd be a veteran that would help their secondary and just do what you want from, a guy like that. And I just think that's where, the rub is with him is he just isn't that good. I think Father Time has been tough on him. And so I think that, you look at him, I give him a C trying to be nice. When I look at their linebackers, Malik Harrison, they brought him in, he got hurt, so let's give him an incomplete. Kenneth Gainwell's another guy they brought in. I think he's been okay. Let's give him a B for that. I think he's been okay. I think for a guy who sort of compliments Jalen Warren, he had a pretty big game. What was it, 2 games ago when Warren was hurt? He's been okay. I don't think that, I don't think that you expect that much more out of him. I think he's been okay. Just okay, but he's been okay. And I think that as a second running back, he's not bad. So I like him a lot from the standpoint of, I'll give him a solid B because you brought him here to do a job, and, well, he's kind of done that job, right? So those are your newer guys. But here's the thing. There's a few other guys that we should talk about. How about Derrick Harmon? Let's give an A so far to him. A rookie who you sort of plugged right in, and he's played really well. I thought he disappeared a little bit against the Bengals. There's going to be an up and down a little bit when you got a rookie, but I think he's going to be a super player for them. And so when I look at him, I say, well, I think he's been a guy who's been okay. Not great, but okay. And he has a chance to be great. That's the beauty of it, right? To me, that is absolutely the beauty of it. Another guy they brought in, I'm not sure where I would rank him. They brought him in from the Browns, Juan Thornhill. Of course, he had a couple of big plays against the Browns, but for the most part, he's sort of just been a guy. So let's give him a C. Jabril Peppers, I don't know. The most significant thing I can think of that he did was get a couple of penalties that were costly in the one game. I think it was against the Browns. So we'll give him a C as well. But my thing about Derrick Harmon is he is a really good draft choice and a really good player for them, and a guy that I think is going to probably be a stud or a star for a long, long time. The Will Howard thing, unfortunately, got hurt, so we gave an incomplete there. Now, if we're going to hit our offseason grades, however, we've got to think about a move or two that were not made. And, of course, I'm talking about receiver. I would give the handling of the receiver position a D. And the only reason I give it a D is because they brought in DK Metcalf. That salvaged it. But trading George Pickens after the draft is one of the dumbest things, one of the dumbest moves the Steelers have made in a long, long time. And coming into the season really believing that Calvin Austin III is going to be a legitimate number 2 receiver is the second dumbest thing that they've done. And I'm just going to tell you, I don't know how you recover from either. Their passing game is struggling in some ways because they don't have a second receiver. They just don't. You need to do better in that regard. And, trading away George Pickens, listen, my thing about that is if you're going to go all in to try and win and bringing in Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Ramsey and these guys, it's pretty clear they're going to try and win this year, right? You can't worry about, if we get rid of George Pickens, if we get rid of him, after the season, or we don't re-sign him after the season, we're going to get, we're not going to get anything for him. Who cares? You have DK Metcalf this year. You have Aaron Rodgers. If you had George Pickens on the other side, could you imagine what this offense would look like? Okay, you move on from George Pickens. Well, who are you replacing him with? And I don't want to hear about Roman Wilson and Ben Skoranek and Scotty Miller and all these guys. Calvin Austin III, the end of his name actually says it all. The third. He should be the third receiver on a good team. And so to me, I look at it that way and I say the handling of the receiver position has been really bad. Really bad. And to me, it's just one of those things where they've got to get better, much better at that position, the number 2 receiver position going forward. I know they've got some draft choices that they've traded for. They should be able to do it. But this was the year they needed that second receiver because this was the year, theoretically, they're going all in. They just didn't go all in. I mean, they didn't go get a receiver. It is what it is. And I think, getting rid of George Pickens, I've heard all the theories and all the different reasons. And, boy, he's a bad guy and a bad teammate and all that other stuff. I don't buy most of it. Nobody said that stuff when he was a moody, times it looked like he might not be giving full effort. But guess what? There was a lot of times when he made incredible plays. And he seems to be doing really well in Dallas. So my thing is, pay the guy. I'm sorry, don't pay the guy, but don't trade the guy. At the end of the year, you let him walk. Period. Sometimes you have to let a guy walk and not get nothing, you not get anything for him and be okay with it. There's discussions about how, Aaron Rodgers didn't want him around and all this other stuff. I've never heard Aaron Rodgers say that. And I think the other thing is, he's bad for the locker room. They've had a lot of guys that have been bad for the locker room that have worked out. So to me, it's all just kind of noise at this point. It really is. Secondly, they are trying to go all in to win. You absolutely do you need a second receiver, and they don't necessarily have one. I'm happy, that Calvin Austin is allegedly coming back. He's not that guy. He just isn't. Some people think he is. He's not that guy. Period. So to me, I just tell you, it's got to be a situation of where, if you ask me, okay, that's got to be a part of the decision. And it's got to be a part of the grading of the offseason. By the way, the FanDuel Casino app, you can get on the FanDuel Casino app. You can bet on a lot of things, a lot of different sports. You can go a lot of different ways with what you decide to do when it comes to betting. But the good news is it's right at the click of your finger, right in the palm of your hands. And the bottom line is when you want to go and try and find stuff to bet on, well, there's plenty. And guess what? Tonight, you've got the start of the NBA season. And that means you've got Golden State against the Lakers. Golden State is -2.5. It's in LA, right? The over-under on your FanDuel app is 226.5. You want to bet if you want to bet Golden State, you lay $100. I'm sorry, you lay $145. You win $100. You want to bet the Lakers, you bet $100, and you can win $125. Most people are picking the Lakers, by the way. If you look at the FanDuel predictor and everything else, reality is, if you look at who is in and who is out, I mean, for the most part, LeBron James is out. So if LeBron James is out, probably changes things completely about who you think is going to win the game. But nevertheless, go to your FanDuel app, download it, and you can also bet on all kinds of other things. Now, the other part of it is if you want to bet on individuals, you could bet on Steph Curry threes, you could bet on, Klay Thompson threes, whatever. There's a million different ways you can bet. Just go to your FanDuel app, download it, and do everything you like to do. Now, the other thing is the game's always on at Archie's. So if you want to go watch the games tonight, go down to Archie's. Archie's will have both NBA games and some of the NHL games. You can watch it at Archie's. The game's always on. And Archie's, home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. So get down to Archie's and tell Archie I said hello when you're there. Archie's one of our friends, one of a really good guy. More importantly, I think Archie's is a great place to eat, drink, and be merry. So get down to Archie's, and when you're there, tell them I said hello. A couple more minutes just to reiterate what is going on in terms of Omar Khan and what he did this offseason. I think if he has more off seasons like this, he will be in a situation where he has an opportunity, right, to what I would say, really build a good roster. But guess what? He won't build a good roster, okay? Will not build a good roster unless he gets a quarterback of the future. Period. Unless he gets a quarterback of the future. That's what he needs. And so that's really ultimately how he is going to be, that's basically where he's going to be judged, ultimately. If he ends up finding the next Ben Roethlisberger, then everybody will say, boy, this guy was unbelievable. If he doesn't, then I think it's going to be one of those situations where people are going to say, you know what? He left the Steelers short. Period. That's true. That's life. That's how you're judged. He ultimately also has to go find and go get another receiver to go at DK Metcalf. Should have tried to find that this year, but he hasn't. But at the end of the day, I think if you look at the big picture, he needs to find a quarterback. Needs to find a quarterback of the future. And then if he does, he will be judged differently probably than if he doesn't. But so far, I think, most of the moves he made this offseason were solid. The only one that I think is fallen down or fallen apart is the fact that he hasn't really addressed the receiver position when he probably should have. And so that's really, what we're talking about. The receiver position has got to get better. He didn't make it better. In fact, he made it in some ways worse because he added DK Metcalf and George Pickens, so he had two, and then he got rid of George Pickens. And so to me, they don't have that second receiver that, you really need if you want to try and win at a reasonably high level. At any rate.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.